Welcome, listeners. Here we are today with Dr. Thomas Jordan, and I'm so excited to learn from Dr. Jordan today. I think that this is going to be really important for the listeners because you've studied love for 30 years, and you've got a book about it, which we'll talk a little bit more about at the end. But you want to help people make corrections and have a better future. That's what I want. So I'm so thankful that you're here, Dr. Thomas Jordan. Just welcome to Doing Divorce Different. And we're just really looking forward to getting to know you.
Thank you for inviting me, Lisa. I look forward to it.
Well,
Absolutely.
can you give us a little background? I mean, it says you've been doing this for about 30 years. What led you to study love?
The first thing I would suggest is to correct a little bit. I don't study love. I study love relationships. And
Thank you.
I open my book with that in my preface that this is not a book about love. Love's a wonderful, unpredictable, uncontrollable emotion. We have no idea where it comes from. Some people think it's purely biological. Some people think it's spiritual, psychological. It's probably all of the above. Um, so that's an unpredictable, uncontrollable phenomena. It might happen more than once in a person's life. Who knows, right?
Right.
Uh, what we can do something about is the type of relationship we set up when we fall in love. The relationship we set up, healthy or unhealthy, is what contains that love and grows it. If you set up a healthy relationship, fine. There's a good chance the love will last a lifetime. If you set up an unhealthy relationship, then there can be problems because the relationship in and of itself can stifle the love that you're experiencing. And I believe that's what happens when you have a divorce. People become attracted, they may experience a form of love with each other, but
Mhm.
then the relationship they set up is not viable. And as a consequence, the love is strangled or diminished and finally destroyed. So it's my thing is trying to understand interpersonal relationships. I'm a clinical psychologist and an interpersonal psychoanalyst. I'm with NYU postdoc here in New York City. My emphasis is how interpersonal relationships are a source of difficulty for people and also a source of healing. So I'm very interested in what happens between people and how to harness those positives to help people understand. The other thing that's important to know about me is that I'm big into what's called unconscious learning. I think a lot of learning takes place, especially in the family of origin, that is unconscious. What that means is that you're not aware of what you're learning, you don't even know you're learning it. The family of origin is an incredibly powerful, it's not the only one, but it's an incredibly powerful classroom. And we're vulnerable, we're impressionable, we're observing. We can learn by relationship, we can learn by observing, sometimes by instruction. But the essence of what I'm saying is that it's unconscious. And because it's unconscious, if you learn something unhealthy early in life, especially relationship learning, chances are you're going to repeat it again and again in your lifetime. The good news is you can become aware of what you've learned. And once that consciousness takes hold, then we can move toward, and this is what I talk about in the book, towards an unlearning
Mhm.
process. And that's the beautiful thing about human beings. It is our greatest resource. We are learners right from the beginning of life,
Yep.
hopefully until the end of life. Some people hang on to what they've learned, unfortunately, when it's unhealthy. That's a problem. Some resistance and defensiveness goes on. But these are all issues to deal with. The good news is, I've witnessed a lot of people, to get to your question, basically, I've witnessed a lot of people in my office who've replicated unhealthy relationship experiences over and over again. And my understanding of what that was about over the course of time that I've researched love relationships is that some unconscious learning took place and it was basically shaping the type of experiences people would find and have in their love lives. And again, if it was healthy, beautiful, not a problem.
Right.
If it's unhealthy, then chances are you're going to do the same thing over and over again. And I'll tell you, I have met numerous people. I'll give you an example. A person comes into my office, about 50 years old. She's having relationship problems. We do a little history. I find out she grew up in a home with an alcoholic, violent father who physically abused mom while she and her siblings watched. So, okay, I get the details of that. Then we move to what's happening in your love life presently. And she tells me that she married and divorced 2 alcoholic, violent men, and the guy she's with now is verbally abusive. So I ask a simple question, and this is an educated, intelligent person. I say, do you think there's a relationship between where you grew up and what's happening in your adult love life? And she looked at me like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget that look. And it really stayed with me. And I use it as a resource because that look identifies the unconscious nature of this learning. That she learned that that was the blueprint, that was the template to understand what kind of love relationship to form when you fall in love. It triggered, it was automatic, it went to town right there, and it destroyed her love life to the age of 50. And our work was to make all of that conscious and to, and to make sure she understood that what what she witnessed in childhood became the foundation of what she created excuse me, in her adult love life.
So what I'm hearing is kind of the first step in unlearning it is to become aware of it.
Absolutely. All
and
the
you
time.
know, it seems so clear to us as you tell me that story that she should see where this came from, but it wasn't clear to her.
No, not at all. And that's the unconscious. Unconscious learning involves learning without awareness of what you're learning or that you're even learning. The other reason why I got into this research was a more personal one. My love life between the age of 17 and 35 was what I call in the book the disappointing love life.
Mm-hmm.
And disappointing love lives have certain things that identify it as a disappointing love life. One thing is repetition. Things tend to happen over and over again. In our conversation, it would be mistakes that are formed in terms of a love relationship. If you've learned something unhealthy, like all men abandon because my father abandoned me when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
So without awareness, I go looking for an unavailable man. And I find them one after the other.
It's so crazy that we would look for that when it's not really what we think we want.
Absolutely. And I discovered that the behavior, and we'll talk a little bit about that, because what I did is I went into the meat and potatoes of what the learning consists of, because my job is to take it apart. My job is to disrupt it, to challenge it, to break it up, to help people become aware. And this is stage 2 of what they've learned so that they can begin the unlearning process. And the unlearning process begins when people challenge what they've learned.
Okay.
When they say, no, this is unhealthy. And it's a wonderful thing about human beings, and I'm skipping ahead to the unlearning method right now. Stage 2 is that we have the wonderful ability to challenge things we've learned, challenge habits, challenge things we're used to, challenge things where, here's a nice little mixed word, familiar. The root of familiar is family. Familiar, what we're familiar with tends to replicate, because that kind of learning happens early in life. The people that are teaching us are major characters: mom, dad, uncle, Jim, Aunt Mary, whatever, brother, sister, neighbors. These are all part of the extended family, in my view. They're teachers of relationships. So it's important to realize that we possess the capacity to confront what we've learned, and that confrontation with consciousness now sets up a process of disruption. We're starting to stop it from being automatic. We're starting to say, no, this is not going to dominate my love life. And in that period, for example, in the work that I do, it's almost like a self-study. You're making the love life an area that people can work on. And oftentimes people don't imagine that. We work on everything else.
Right.
We work on our financial lives. We work on our legal lives. We work on our medical lives. And the love life, I don't need to work on my love life. I know how to be in love. wait a minute. Do you know how to set up the kind of love relationship you need that will preserve, protect, and grow the love? So that's the stage, the second stage. Getting back to the statement, I answer your question about another reason why I got into this is that between the ages of 17 and 35, my love life was disappointing, multiple disappointments. In an analysis here in New York with an analyst who understood a little bit about love, he pointed out that I was using my mother's template to define the eligible woman. My mother was a first generation immigrant from Europe. She was dependent, she was controlling, and she was self-centered. And that self-centeredness came because there was a lot of things that were unhappy inside of her. And I was the son that got to learn a lot about that. You know, she claims that it had something to do with helping me become who I am today. But that's
I think it does.
funny
I
little
agree.
thing we have with each other, right?
Yeah.
Tom, I'm responsible for what you want to. Anyway, so when the analyst pointed that out, I realized he was accurate, but it was very befuddling. I wasn't sure what am I going to do about this, and I took a break from dating. Women became these alien creatures that I didn't understand. I didn't have any sisters, so it was interesting. You know, half awareness. I'm more aware of it now, but at that time, I sought out female friends. I had a best female friend for about 5 years. We palled around, and it was like an internship, female psychology. And what I had to do in that process, as I understand it now, is to define eligible women as independent, not controlling, and intimate, as opposed to self-centered.
Right.
And the person that I became friends with was such a person. And we weren't romantic. There was no sexual activity between us, but we were good friends. And it was funny. After that relationship cooled and we parted, my wife showed up, Victoria.
Really?
And, she's an independent, not controlling, intimate person. We got married. And I've been married for 28 years.
Congratulations. I'm at 31.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. But I think I like what you're saying. And I think that people moving on from a divorce need to make sure that they do this work so they don't end up in the same position. And even as you're talking, I'm thinking about people who are thinking about getting married. You know, it's hard to get divorced, and divorce, I mean, marriage is a big deal. It's a legal contract, and you need to do it with the right person. So I feel like your book is going to help young people. It's going to help people who have gone through a divorce, you know, anyone who's needing to learn. And I love hearing about learning from relationships from our family, because I really have not ever thought through that. I haven't thought through the relationship that my parents had that I watched, you know, that uncles and aunts and grandparents had. And I think as you're talking, I can see a connection between who I married.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That process of replication that I mentioned, you know, that oftentimes is physical. I put together a PowerPoint presentation because I've been experimenting with different ways to get the message out, you know. And so I tried to pick slides that were, you know, have an impact. And I found this slide where you see two people who married someone, a man and a woman, who married someone who looks like the opposite sex parent. You know, and I love that slide because it points out that replication isn't just emotional. Replication can occur physical. You know, if you're familiar with a mother who has blonde hair and you pick a woman with blonde hair, that has meaning. That means something. You might not make a big deal out of it, but something's at work in your mind.
That's interesting that you're saying that, because people have said that my husband and I resemble each other.
Interesting.
And then this is really interesting too. My brother's wife, they've been married longer than we have, looks like my husband.
There you go. There's a prototype. there's a physiognomy, there's a physical feature pattern
Yeah.
alive in these relationships, right? But the wonderful thing about it is it's unconscious.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, look, we can't make everything conscious. I don't know if we even want to. Maybe what we want to do is make sure that when something's unhealthy, we make that conscious. Because when you make something conscious for someone, you empower them. They're empowered to do
Yes.
something with that. Stage 3, if I could go to stage 1, establish consciousness, as you pointed out.
Yep.
Step 2 is to challenge what we've learned,
Yep.
right? Step 3 is a correction by choosing the opposite. I chose the opposite of dependence. My mother never left home. Her parents lived upstairs in the house we owned all her life. The opposite of control is freedom, being in a relationship where you don't control your partner. The opposite of self-centered is intimate, mutual, where you have an exchange with someone. It's not focused on just one
Mm-hmm.
person. So the opposite is very powerful in this. And I think the opposite, once you're aware that you've identified what the unhealthy relationship experiences were that taught you what was unhealthy,
Mm-hmm.
that's made conscious. You're starting to oppose it. In other words, you're interrupting it, you're disrupting it.
Mm-hmm.
The final stage is to realize the opposite is a healing experience. So if I have someone in my office that's at stage 3, I encourage them to identify when the unhealthy pattern shows up early, when they start dating, for example. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
after a divorce, someone takes a little break, starts dating. Okay, now I want you to bring your consciousness with you when you go on a date. Be able to label who the person is that you're talking to. Are they the opposite of what you were taught? For example, are you sitting with someone who is independent versus dependent, who is able to have a commitment instead of abandoning or neglectful, who is accepting instead of rejecting? In my book, I listed 10 unhealthy relationship experiences that I found over the years show up in people's love lives over and over again. So getting a sense of what the opposites are allows you to steer your love life in a new and healing direction. And that's really where a person gets control over their love life. It becomes something that you can manage to a certain extent.
Well, and I have to believe that that can be really uncomfortable.
What do you
Can it?
mean by that?
Well,
In
I
what
feel
way?
like doing the opposite of
Unfamiliar.
unfamiliar, doesn't that sound uncomfortable?
Right. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh, the unfamiliar is always uncomfortable. I'll throw another word out: anxiety producing a
Mhm.
little bit.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. I work with a woman who was abandoned by a parent early in life, and she found unavailable men over the course of her life. She's a little older now, and we were talking about finding an available man, and she was talking with me about it somewhat intellectually, and I said, how do you feel about what we're talking about? And she said, it scares the crap out of me. And I said,
Mhm.
what do you mean by that? And she said, the unfamiliar, not knowing. I had no experience with availability. It wasn't something that was modeled in my family. My father was out of the house a lot. He had other partners. My mother was tolerating it. And she said, I'm going to have to learn how to tolerate this as best I can. And that, in a sense, becomes the practice. It's
Right.
not something you do once and it's over. This correction I'm talking about is a devotion. You're going to practice it. Look at the motivator. If I can correct my love relationship history, if I can move from disappointing love relationships to ones that are satisfying, healthy, and enduring, I mean, how motivating is that?
Very motivating, and I think that it's something that I always tell people, you do have to do the work.
Absolutely.
It
Good
doesn't just
word. Work. And
happen.
it is work, because you're going against basic unconscious learning. You're going against familiarity. You're going against something that's been practiced in some instances. Sometimes people have multiple disappointments once they start looking into their love life and notice it. Oh boy, look at that. I'm picking the same kind of man over and over again. I'm picking the same kind of woman over and over again. It ends in the same kind of way. I'm doing the same thing over and over again that I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
I took this idea of unhealthy relationship experiences that get replicated, and I brought it to the level of how do people recreate these experiences. To understand the disappointing love life, you start with repetition. You want to look for a pattern. You want to see. That's the first step. That's what aids consciousness. You're going to take a look at something and you're going to see, wow, this is happening over and over again. And it's amazing what people can see once they look at their love life. Put it on a workbench. Take a look at it for a minute. Back away from just repeating things over and over again and take a look at what's happening. And then replication, being able to say, okay, what's happening is not just repetition. I'm replicating something I experienced, I was exposed to, I was shown earlier in life. So that adds a little more, flesh and bone to the situation because you're seeing the replication. Now let's talk about recreation. Recreation is a wonderful idea that puts the onus on the individual where it belongs. If you're going to make changes in your love life, you have to accept the fact that you're creating the very love life that's disappointing. And some people put up a bit of a resistance to that. Wait a minute, I'm not, my partner's recreated. My husband's responsible. My wife's responsible. No. You're the person that creates your own love life experience. And that's where the change takes place. I call it changing the psychological love life, because in my opinion, in my research, you don't change your love life out here between you and other people. You change it in here, in your mind, what you're bringing into your love life. That's what, when you change that, permanent changes show up in a person's love life. So what I did with the recreation, and let's put the little RE in front of creation because it's recreation because it's unconscious, just like repetition and replication. It means something's happening over and over again, and you're not necessarily aware of what it is. So we can recreate without being aware of what we're recreating. Woo, that's a scary little concept, because I could say to that person, your wife, your not wife, your wife too, your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to these earlier experiences you've had in life that are replicating, repeating, and recreated in your love life. So let's put the responsibility into the hands of the individual so we can empower them to make the changes. So recreation, how is it done? And this is what I found. Beliefs, behavior, and feelings. The three basic aspects of experience.
Okay.
If I grow up in a home where there's abuse, deep down inside, and I have found this in too many people over the years, I believe that love relationships, they're abusive. I learned it early in life, and I'm convinced on some deep, unaware level that they always end up the same way, abusive. Because that's the fundamental experience I had in my life.
Right.
So that belief is a problem. Second, behavior. I go looking for abusive people. I let them find me. I find them, or they find me, or both. Because I learned that that's what eligibility consists of.
And it's familiar.
And it's familiar, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, all the different kinds of abuses. And by the way, if you grew up with physical abuse and you're recreating Verbal abuse, still abuse.
Right.
Still abuse. They hang around together, all those abuses.
Right.
Financial abuse is using somebody's money when you don't have to. So, um, so the behavior, unconscious behavior is, I find this type of individual. I remember working with a person. She had a great sense of humor. This was a while ago, and she had been married and dating alcoholic men, because she grew up in an environment where a lot of males were alcoholic in her family. And I said to her in a lighter moment, I said, because she was single and dating now, and I said to her, if I had a party with 50 eligible men, not a drop of alcohol, one of them was an alcoholic, would you be talking to him by the end of the night? She started laughing. She said, I'd find them somewhere or other. I'd know them. I said,
so
oh my
crazy.
God, wait a minute. We got to do something about that. She
Right.
had like some kind of, I don't know, some kind of radar for the alcoholic man, and not a drop of alcohol. It wasn't like he was downing martinis or something. So it was really a funny moment, which had a lot of meaning.
Right.
And so the third thing is feelings, and familiarity is a powerful word that I kind of add to feelings. Feelings come with these unhealthy relationship experiences we've had. For example, if you've been abandoned early in life, the feeling is loss. Your love life's going to have a lot of loss in it. If you've been abused, if you've witnessed abuse when you were young, your love life is going to have a lot of fear, because you're going to find abusive people or recreate fear in others by being abusive yourself. If control, there was a lot of control early in life, a lot of possessiveness and control, you're going to be recreating this trapped feeling of no freedom in your love relationship. So there's a feeling that goes with these beliefs and behaviors. And the three of those areas are important to understand what is being recreated. So when you get into the detail of helping people stop recreating and create something healthy, create without the RE, create something healthy, you're taking apart those beliefs. You're challenging those behaviors. You're pointing out how these familiar experiences are giving you a sign that recreation is still active. So people become very good at understanding consciously how they might recreate something they don't want, that's unhealthy. And boy, oh boy, that wisdom, that knowledge empowers a person to begin choosing the opposite, pushing their love life in a new direction. Oftentimes, I find that people take a little time after a divorce to do that.
Well, Tom, as you're talking, so this is interesting. I decided to get a hard copy of your book. I just read a little bit of it because I want my husband to read it too. And I feel like this can even help you in your marriage if become aware, and you can create something together as long as you're both willing
Beautiful.
to.
That's right. If there's, yeah, absolutely. I have a friend who edited the book, and he pointed out, and he said, this book's for divorced, separated, widowed, never married people. And I said, no, it's for couples as well. And I remember us having a little debate about that. If you understand your psychological love life, and you understand your husband's psychological love life, and he understands his psychological love life, and your psychological love life, that wisdom, that knowledge is very powerful. And if you have the ingredient you just pointed out, working together, a motivation to work on your love life as a married person, boy, that's powerful stuff. You can help each other. Oh, excuse me, John, I think you're replicating ABCD. And I have to tell you, Victoria, who happens to be a mental health professional, she and I are in a group practice. That'll make it worse, by the way. She's an analyst, as I am. She's done things at the beginning of our marriage in particular, like, Tom, I think your mother's in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'll say the same to her, like try to point out that this person who's closest to you can see how you've had a lapse in consciousness and
Yep.
how these old patterns come back in. And they're never useful. They're always harmful.
No, we do the same thing. I mean, I can see his mama sometimes, and it's not.
You show him
Yes,
his behavior or what he
yes,
expects of you, right?
yes. So interesting. So, Dr. Thomas Jordan, I can't believe this time is getting away from me today
Oh, okay,
because
all right.
it has been so fun chatting with you. And I'm going to report back on how this goes with my husband and
Thank
I
you.
when
Thank
we work
Thank
together.
you so much. Thank you.
But
I enjoyed myself.
oh my gosh, it's just been such a blessing to have you here. And as you know, when I start to wrap up my podcast, I always ask my guests to talk about a tidbit, a little piece of advice, something for our saddle up segment, something that people can do right now to have a better life or a better relationship.
Yeah. I'm going to put together a couple of things that we touched on that I think is very important, and that is the idea that you can work on your love life. And it's something that should be worked on. And that phrase, work on your love life, I think it has a certain intensity to it because it invites people to look inside, to treat your love life as something that can change, can be worked on, can be improved. And I would recommend the first step is always to look at your love life and see if there's repetition occurring. That's the first step. If you can identify repetition, you're on your way, because that's going to create a curiosity as to what this repetition is all about. Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Am I repeating something that is destructive, interfering with my love life? And if a person starts with that, I find that it encourages and motivates a person to really take seriously, let's look at my love life, especially if they undergo a divorce. The time between, I would recommend this to your divorced clients and people that watch your podcast, is that a divorce is hurtful, sometimes ugly, sometimes painful, always painful perhaps, but the time between divorce and your next relationship is a very important period. It is the time, if you can just accept the understanding that you can work on your love life in that period, that individual period of time, that single time, looking inside, that improves the chances of doing much better the next time around, whenever next time around comes.
I love that advice. And now I know that I can find your book on Amazon.
Yes.
How can people, and we'll have that in the show notes, how can people get a hold of you, get in touch with you?
Yes. I have a website called lovelifelearningcenter.com. And there's a lot of stuff up there. I have information about the book there. I have my wife and I offer love life consultations by phone for people that are interested in going through the steps that I talked about and need a little support, a little bit of clarification, guidance perhaps to get through it. Talk a little bit about the presentation that I'll be doing virtually this winter. I'm starting it. I'm going to do a lot of Zoom presentations. So if people have a group they'd like me to talk to, I'm very interested in doing that. So there's a lot of stuff. Plus there's 300 plus articles on that blog, because I wanted it to be an online library where people would get some real clinically accurate, real information about love life issues and suggestions about what to do. So it's been up since 2012. So it's really, it's some of the podcast, some of the posts that I get commentary on, it just blow me away. It's powerful stuff, and I read everything.
Oh, that's wonderful. So listeners, if you are looking for how to have a better relationship in the future, find Dr. Thomas Jordan at Love Life Learning
Center.com.
Center.com. And Dr. Thomas Jordan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and I appreciate getting to know you. And this is going to help my marriage. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. I had a great time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Dr. Thomas Jordan, what do you think about when you think about doing divorce different?
Doing divorce different? I think about working on your love life as the necessary post-divorce experience. That's what's needed. if I'm working with a divorcing person, and I could introduce the idea of working on your love life, and it's something that they accept and get serious about, I feel a lot of gratification with that. I feel that that's really going to make the next love relationship they have a different one. So it's encouraging people to do a little bit of psychological work, and that's really important. And the relief you get, and by the way, when I was looking at statistics, 50% divorce rate, it goes lower. A lot of people avoiding marriage, I hear, which is making the statistic go crazy. But what was troubling was I found the statistic: 60% second marriages go to divorce, 73 on third marriages. Wait a minute. That's pure and simple proof that people are making the same mistake over and over again. So working on your love life, that's the way out, for all of us. All right. Be well. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.